Okay, so I can begin. Okay, so welcome everyone to today's webinar, Insights from Women Entrepreneurs on Opportunities, Challenges, and Recommendations in Brazil's Nature-Based Transition to a Greener Economy. My name is Katie Weintraub. I am the She Changes Climate Brazil lead, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. She Changes Climate is a global advocacy movement working to amplify the voices of women in climate leadership all across the globe in all the different. So today's webinar is part of a series of webinars that we're doing in partnership with the Green Economy Initiative and IIED about the just transition. So looking at how can we transition to a low carbon, sustainable economy that includes all members of society and particularly women. So we're doing it for a few different countries. And for Brazil, we chose to look at how nature-based solutions can be a key part of this transition. It's actually estimated that 1/3 of the climate mitigation needed to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement can be provided by nature-based solutions. And Brazil is really leading the way in this area. So just to clarify for those of you who don't know, nature-based solutions are essentially actions that protect, restore, manage ecosystems, and to address challenges like climate change. They're really working to use nature's processes and to improve the environment and also help human beings. But this is not just minimizing human impacts on nature. This isn't just reducing waste or decreasing water use. Those aren't nature-based solutions. They're really regenerative solutions. So today we have three really phenomenal women social entrepreneurs from Brazil who are leaders and visionaries to speak about their work. Andrea Alvarez, Thais Corral, and Fabricia Sterci. But before I ask them a few questions, I first just wanted to invite Mamta, who is the executive director of She Changes Climate, to give us a bit of a larger vision, and then we'll go into the content for the day. So thank you so much for everyone joining us from across the world. Mamta, we can't hear you. You're mute.
Thank you so much, Katie, and a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today. Also, my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panelists for your time and your insight. Globally, 772 million women work in the informal sector. This is the sector with jobs that lack social protection, that receive negligible investment, and they're largely excluded from the mainstream economic growth discourse. Yet, research shows that large-scale inclusive investment in this sector could generate 300 million jobs globally by 2035. Makes it very clear, investing in women is not about survival. It is about unlocking economic growth and resilience. Across the world, women are leading the way in green solutions, transforming health, agriculture, natural resource management, and clean energy. But their leadership remains constrained by systemic barriers and a lack of visibility. Their stories, their innovation, and the impact, they need to be amplified. And that is exactly what She Changes Climate Gender Just Transition Initiative aims to, spotlighting the incredible work of women who are shaping sustainable future. As Katie said, our focus today is on nature-based solution, a critical pillar in achieving climate goals. Recent new research has highlighted that for Brazil to meet its net zero target, 80% of its emission reduction will come from nature-based solutions alone. This is a powerful testament to the role of ecosystem and community-driven conservation in tackling climate change. Today's discussion is more than just an exchange of ideas. It is the call for action for a gender-just transition that ensures women receive the recognition, resources, and investments that are needed to scale their impact. This year, all eyes are on Brazil. And at She Changes Climate, we are here to demonstrate with you the true potential of women at the forefront, leading with solution, resilience, care, and vision. We are really thankful to the Green Economy Coalition and IIED for their support to this campaign. And thank you once again for everybody who has joined. Looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Mamta. So today we want to hear about what are the amazing nature-based solutions that are happening in Brazil. So first, I would like to call up a dear friend and inspiration, Andrea Alvarez, who is one of the leaders in the social bioeconomy from a business perspective, having worked as chief officer at Natura, as well as being part of many women, climate, and business organizations in Brazil. I was hoping you could tell us a bit about what you're doing and what you're seeing for nature-based solutions in Brazil. Led by women, of course.
Well, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever people might be hearing us from, or even evening. It's really an honor to be here with She Changes Climate, the coalitions, and these amazing fellow panelists. So very, very happy to be here. I was listening to Mamta in her opening speech, and I was thinking about it. It seems so obvious. It should be so obvious that we should invest in women because there is no lack of data to support the importance of investing in women. We obviously know that the reason why we don't invest in women are historical, cultural, economic, political, and that there is systemic asymmetries that have followed us throughout time, and that it takes time for us to change all of that. But we are in a position where we have, I believe, reached tipping points in terms of the comprehension or the collective comprehension of the dire need to accelerate the investment in women because we are facing climate crises that are so unprecedented that we cannot wait anymore and hold back when we know that the solution is already available if we make these women who are at the forefront of climate protection and of practices of engaging with nature and engaging in providing the livelihood of basic sustenance systems to the world and help them thrive. So, what I'm doing right now is trying to help as much as I can in that direction. I currently lead a socio-bioeconomy fund in Brazil that has called Famagaia Socio-Bioeconomy Fund, and its intent is to mobilize mainstream capital to invest away from degrading businesses or solutions to start investing in things that can actually regenerate the world. So this is one of our dreams, is if we could imagine a world where investments can regenerate the biomes that capital itself helped to destroy, and mobilizing this financial capital to finance social and environmental solutions that bring about the necessary change for a positive future. And women are at the center of these solutions. So we basically have an approach to doing this where everything we finance has to simultaneously address social, environmental, and financial requirements. And what we are doing is making these credit instruments available to organizations, and many of these women-led organizations, but even if they're not women-led, very much impactful to women in the field that are working in socio-bioeconomy activities. And these can be agricultural, extractive, fisheries, mangroves, all sorts of different bioeconomy activities. But these people are usually isolated and not have absolutely no access to credit. And what we try to do, and we have been doing so far, is to structure credit instruments that are fair in their design and that help these people not only use the funds adequately, but also be able to pay the loan back and then have reinvestment in the same territory so that we can also increase territorial resilience. So we've been setting this up since about a year now, a year and a half. And we've invested in already 9 different projects in 5 different biomes in Brazil. More than 2,000 people already directly impacted. That doesn't include the indirect impact. All of these have included a significant amount of women in these projects as well. And they come with inequality reduction, because that is also one of the key variables. We have to not only protect the biodiversity and the ecosystems in which the projects are embedded, but it has to produce social equity and reduction of inequalities that are so systemic to the operating systems and to the economy as we have it. So, Katie, if we could go to the next slide very quickly, and then because we believe that there is no possible business in an uninhabitable ecosystem, and it's still very curious to me to observe how we see people just driving away, doing things as they've always been done, knowing that the outcome of how we are conducting our lives and conducting our businesses is taking us to a place where no one wants to go to, but we continue in that direction. So we need to understand that we won't be able to profit from a planet that is dead, in its capacity to regenerate itself and create life conditions for us here. I mean, the planet will be fine and eventually the planet will move on. But the kind of livelihoods that we as humans on this planet and many other species will be significantly altered if we don't accelerate the pace of change. Now, many tipping points have already gone, and we know that. Anyone connected to the climate agenda knows that some of the things that we should have done, we didn't do, and it will be inevitable, and we will have suffering, and we will continue to have extreme climate events, but there is still so much that we can do. And so accelerating the pace of change is, to me, absolutely necessary, because there will be no environmental preservation without social justice. So we have to have these hand in hand and in tandem as we move forward. And before I end, and Katie, if you want to take down the presentation, I think we can go back to just us. I was looking up some stats of my initial introductions. Like, I can't believe why people don't invest in women, because the statistics are so absurdly important. I mean, women make up more than half of the agricultural labor force across the world, especially in Africa and in Latin America, in the countries where you have abundant natural resources still to be deployed. But they access less than 10% of the credit available, despite being half of the population and being intensely involved in these production activities. And all of the stats that also Mamta brought about GDP growth and even the entrepreneurs, the data on entrepreneur access to credit. I was looking at the global financing gap for women. It's estimated at $1.7 trillion in terms of gap. Now, imagine what that amount of money could do if it was more quickly, more seamlessly, and more fluidly directed at the people who are at the forefront and that know what to do with the money, they just need the money. So with that, I end and I pass on to the next fellow participant.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So next I would like to call up Thais Kohau, who is one of those people who is at the forefront, who's doing the job on the ground. She is not only my mentor and friend, and I've worked closely with her all these years at Sinal do Vale, but she is really one of the forerunners of women and climate in Brazil. So if you could share about your project and what that looks like for nature-based solutions in Brazil, and I'll share your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure. It's also, I feel very honored to be, when I was invited to be an ambassador of She Changes Climate, because I was one of the founders. Maybe later, Katie, let me just, is after that one. But I was one of the founders of We Do, which was maybe the first organization that globally raise the voices and the I would say also the culture of the women at the forefront of these global endeavors. No, when we were starting the process of Rio 92, which was where all these conventions were designed. No, the Climate Convention, the Biodiversity Convention, and Agenda 21. And I think over the years, no, in which we were very successful because we built the Women's Agenda 21, and we kind of could put into the documents that had no word about women or about. I wouldn't say when you talk about women, many times you say, but why do you talk about women? Because when you talk about women, we talk about the humanity. No, it's not just about the women, because I remember how outraged we felt to see all these documents that just talk about population control and conservation of nature. No, I remember how furious we all were at the beginning of this process. No, and looking back, and who we are now, and all the issues that we are able to raise, and the participation of women, I mean, in many of these instances, no, of institutional instances, since that the UN Women know that since that time, I think we made a lot of progress, no? But why on the ground? And that's the question that I raised to myself after like 15 years of being like a global advocate, like you are now in the era of the digital era and the AI era, how things at the ground didn't change as much, because this is the question that we have to raise. The 21st century is the century of implementation. It's really to land all these things we have been fighting for, and many of our sisters and brothers have fought for decades, no? And in my view, we have to really, like how to say, raise our sleeves, how you say it in English, like to push our sleeves and really to go to the ground, because this is where the people, no, the people that have been disconnected to all this process to some extent, but still are the ones that carry the work, the everyday work of life, because as workers, as caretakers, especially as women, have to be acknowledged as really a central agents of this change, and that you can only do if you really, and that humbly you kind of put yourself at the point of being those bridges, and that's what I, at the beginning of the year 2000, when I saw that so little, in spite of all these incredible conversations we have at the saloons of the UN and many of these institutions, and like the amendments of documents, so little still happened, and so little money went to these people, to women, to communities, and all that. And this is what we started like a 15, almost 20 years ago, with for me, like 20 years ago, when I decided really to work at the local level entirely, put my focus, flipped it over, before I was looking at local and being global, which is much more glamorous, and putting my hands, a little bit of my hands locally, and now I do the opposite. I am local and I do a little bit global, and and of course with the partnerships with all of you. And I really feel that in spite of the fact that I don't have power, I don't have money, I just have like a reputation, of course, and an amazing network of incredible people. But the impact we have had is much bigger, no? So I have a claim to make, and especially for young people like Fabricia, like Katie, like many of you, that I think that more and more people have to really get the use these skills that we learn of being bridges, of being connectors, and use to really access these funds, to break really these very heavy doors of the institutions, that in spite of the people that in spite of the fact that they have people inside that are that are somehow have good intentions, but there are so many mechanisms that have to be totally transformed that unless we have an army of people really committed, on a long term, it's very difficult that this will change. It will continue to be like in the statements, in the books, in the big saloons, but it won't go to the ground. So this is the example that we offer, the example of Sinaldo Valley, which is we call it a biohub, which was a nice way, because we are not just an NGO, we are not a company, we are like an enabler and a connector of everything that is on the ground, on a region that is at the reach of our hand. And there we connected many people. But I believe that it's important to talk about women. But for me, after 40 years of being a feminist and an ecofeminist, I think it's very important also to talk about human values, no? Because this is what we have been losing, and putting the all life at the center, no, not just the humans, I mean the animals, the nature in general, because this is all part, this is was in the extractivist mind, this is was all that was dismissed and pushed aside. So this is what in the just transition that we offer as an example and also as an experience that we have done with the love with a lot of people. And maybe we have the theory of change, maybe, Katie, that we can put there, our theory of change, that the biohub is the catalyzer, the bioregion is the scale, because we really have to meet with each other. No, it's not just something that doesn't exist or is very far. And the field of the bioeconomy, the regenerative economy, the economy that really creates life instead of destroying life. So this is what we really would like to share with you, and this is what we want to bring to the COP as well, and highlight how women the forefront, especially women leadership. I don't like only to talk about women's projects, but I would like really to strengthen the importance of women leadership, because we know that we are much more capable of integrating and including what has been pushed aside, because we feel and we see it, and so if you see and if you feel it and you see it, you will do it. And that's what I would like to contribute in this first round of the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you who don't know Sinaldo Valley is 200 hectares. It's a physical place doing restoration work in the Atlantic forest right outside of Rio de Janeiro, with many prototypes and piloting small businesses and actions that can be scaled up in the bioregion. And as you can see in the graphic, the bioregion is the area in which we act, in which the Sinaldo Valley implements, and then the bioeconomy is the field. So next, I'm going to ask Fabricia, who is an activist, an artist, a data journalist, and she's dedicated to advancing climate resilience and nature-based solutions, particularly in periphery communities. So take it away. And would you like me to share your presentation already?
Yes, please. Only the first slide, the first two slides, please. So good morning, good afternoon. I'm honored for the opportunity. I'm so happy to be here with these incredible women. So I'm Fabricia Sterci, co-founder of Visão Co-op, a collective intelligence platform for climate action based in the Global South. And we connect grassroots communities, regenerative technologies, and public policies to build just and resilient futures. So Visão is born out of a need. I'm from Queimados in Rio de Janeiro, which was the most violent city in Brazil just a few years ago, and also has a history of flooding. In 2013, my house was partially destroyed by a flood, and I felt powerless as my hard-earned belongings sank into water and mud. And this led me to the question, about the absence of public authorities. And in 2020, Queimados suffered from yet another flood. And by then, I had started learning how to work within a network, and I became one of the leaders of a flood response brigade. And we mobilized together young people for a collective effort, something we call mutirão, aligned with the call to action made by the COP30 president. And we together combined different skills to help 10,000 people. And meanwhile, the civil defense authorities claimed that everything was under control. And there was one particularly critical area that always appeared in our mapping, a riverside settlement in Queimados. And year after year, in conversations with these residents, mostly women, homemakers without formal degrees, they demonstrated knowledge far beyond the one of the hired engineers. They knew exactly where the problem was, and this problem that was causing these floods every year. So in the end, it was all about a highway bridge built too low, with its pillars inside the river, the structure trapped passing debris, such as furnitures, tires, and they were forming a barrier that prevented water from flowing, causing floods, and turning that place into a critical point of disaster. Kate, please, if you can pass the slide. Thank you. So the focus on gray infrastructure investments, putting concrete into rivers, something that's very common in my city, my neighborhood, increases risks and have to we have to recover ancestral knowledge. Chishai Surui, that's indigenous climate activist, she speaks of ancestral technology, a wisdom deeply rooted in nature. She says that it's more technological to protect a river than to create machines to clean it later. And I really agree with this perspective. So when we talk about adapting territories, we are also talking about ecosystem-based adaptation, considering nature-based solutions. The sponge cities concept, developed by the Chinese urban planner Kong Jinyanyu, highlights that allowing rivers to keep their natural curves and repairing forests reduce flood risks. And retaining water in large, permeable, unpaved areas helps manage the collected water efficiently. So these are practices that traditional communities in Brazil, led by women, also uphold. We envision biocultural abundance for future generations and seek to reintegrate humans as part of nature itself, a legacy of this women's struggle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabrizia. So now what I want to do is just do another round. We have time for one more set of questions. But looking at nature-based solutions and this huge potential that it has in Brazil and across the world, what do you guys see as kind of the opportunities for women, but also what are the real restraints and barriers for women in these situations? And I guess what are the enabling conditions that are needed to actually put women as the solution holders that they are and have the capacity to be? So Andrea, I'm going to start with you again.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it was amazing to hear Thais and to hear Fabricia, and it's again, it's almost common sense. And for some reason, we've been detracted from common sense. And because we've been so disconnected from nature and our natural essence, and recognizing that we are not part of nature, we are nature, we've created cognitive biases relative to what development is, to what technology is. So I was listening to Fabrizia speak about the natural technology that nature has, and that indigenous people so well know and understand, of observing nature and connecting and dialoguing with nature, to, even if it is the case of improving soil quality, or actually interacting with nature to accommodate for specific needs, it's done in harmony. It's not, we're not building concrete. They're not building concrete things. And I once listened to an indigenous person who said, I think it was Krenak's book, where he said, we indigenous people, we don't build to last 5,000 years. We actually like the fact that we will have to rebuild our houses every 5 or 10 years, because that's the way we can teach our new generations the techniques that we learned. And this idea of cycles and of death and regeneration and rebirth, and that we've just been so disconnected from all of that. So I think, going back to your question, Katie, I think one of the things we need to know and to do is unlearn and reconnect, because this logical, Cartesian, rational approach to science and to development that have brought good things. I'm not saying it's all bad, but when it is disharmonized with our understanding that we are interdependent with the planet, it has taken us to where we are now. So we need to, redirect and correct course, connecting whatever scientific knowledge that we have today that are even now proving many of the things that were just intuitively known or learned through tens of thousands of years from these indigenous communities, and that now we can prove them with science. So how do we connect what we've called science with the science that is in nature and the technologies that indigenous people, quilombolas, people who live connected to the land and to nature, understand, and how we connect these things again to accelerate the change of the business models, of the solutions, of the direction of capital, for us to ignite the change that we need. So what are the limitations? And they're very concrete. I mean, we do live in a patriarchal society, and that patriarchy has put women in a place of submission and without access to decision-making environments. And so therefore, they are not at the seat making the decisions that is going to influence the lives of them, their families, and everyone. So we need to help women really and truly occupy these spaces, but not as a show and tell, not to just sit there and say, I have women here. No, to truly invest and respect and consider the comments and the information and the opinions and the solutions that these women have to redesign the way we are conducting things. We need to make sure women have access to education. And in many places in the world, we know that is still a huge challenge. We need to make sure that women are free to decide their fate as best as they can, and not necessarily have to be directed in, inertial following of potential traditions that not necessarily are good for their development. And with immense respect for every single tradition and culture, but we do have to understand how we can emancipate women's voices and women's agency so that they can contribute to the world and everyone will benefit from that. Access to credit, which I had already mentioned, and even legal restrictions. I mean, it's curious, in Brazil, up until the 80s, women weren't allowed to travel without their husband's authorization. That's in the 80s. So, I mean, we need to remember that it's very close to us, the time when we were considered a lot less than men legally, not just culturally or in our in unconscious biases. It was legally. So we also need to look at the legal frameworks that still subside in the world and that are restraining women's ability to develop their full potential. And then, I mean, I think we will only all benefit from the women's capacity to act in their walks of life, bringing their entire selves, not being subject to gender violence and everything that is psychologically and physically limiting to their potential, so that we can all thrive. Because the other statistic that, the World Bank has been publishing for more than 25 years is that women invest 90% of their income in their families and their communities, different from men who usually have a tendency of investing in their own selves or their own bit. Women distribute the value that they help create. And that is a fundamental shift that we need to see in the world so that we develop things that are becoming so rare, but that are still abundant. We just need to kind of shine a light on them, which are cooperation, open source ideas, the true invitation of diversity and diverse thinking to address complex problems. Fabricia mentioned the mutirões, which is so common in the social movements, in Brazil at least, but I imagine across the world, where people just gather together, and it's usually very lively and it's very fun, and people have a barbecue or whatever they eat. Well, maybe no longer barbecues, but whatever. You invite and you have a feast and you build a house and you build whatever that community needs, and that creates resilience. The very much needed resilience in the polarized world that we're living today are also fostered through these practices and these habits, and that women usually help lead with brilliance. So I hope I didn't go astray too much, but that's my thinking on how we can potentialize women and what are the barriers.
Oh, wonderful. And mutirão is such a great Portuguese word that I've tried to translate many times, but there's not a direct translation, but it's just people coming together and working together to get something done all at once. All right, so let's pass it on over to Thais and maybe the same question, but really talking about what are these enabling conditions to let women be leaders?
Yeah, I would like I think Andrea gave a great overview, of also data that show how far we still are. But I think we maybe should focus on how the COP, no COP 30, and the fact that Brazil will be seen so much in terms of this big place in which nature is still standing, and we are producers, the main producers of water and clean air because of the Amazon and our 6 biomes that are all incredible and amazing. No, I live in one, and we protected one where that was totally destroyed. No, where 80% of the population of Brazil lives, which is the Mata Atlântica. But I think it's very important to really take COP and this next month, no, because it's all we live in a world in which we are always competing more than ever for attention, no. I mean, with the social media, with all the communications platform that exists, how we can kind of use them effectively at this time to really showcase what matters and connect with people that really can enable us to go beyond the limits that are already have been established for centuries, for decades. They improve, but they don't improve at the speed that we need. No, we really are in the point that these nature-based solutions will have to be like accelerated, and people that are leading them will have to be empowered. And I still feel, and being someone that has speak several languages and has so many connections, it's so difficult. Every day I have been here 15 days at Sinal, which is a nature-based solution somehow. No, as Katie said, has 200 characters, is the vessel of many initiatives, but it's still so difficult to maintain it in terms of capacity, in terms of funding. And it's not because I am not prepared and we are not prepared, but I think it's still the mechanisms to really accelerate there are not there. So I think it's very important that we are a little bit beyond this advocacy, this general advocacy, and we go more into advocating for very specific solutions and put them at the center of the finance and all these mechanisms that are right now being very, I would say, that we see that they become very, I would say, mainstream. No, nature finance. It's everywhere now. But what is this nature finance doing? And when we go and talk to them, it's still, the money is still going to the big plantations, to the big money. So it's the name, the concept, but then how it's being implemented is more of the same. And we can only face that if we also have the cases, have the solutions, and you can say this is the alternative. And we, as like women's institutions or institutions which are conscious of really focus our narratives, our advocacy, our action in terms of pushing for them, because I think it's not going to happen just naturally. It will have to be, as usual, it will have to be like we will have to push them and have them very clear and very well, like narrated and communicated. And I think that we have in these months to come an opportunity for that. This is what Sinal is going to do. We are going to identify and highlight I mean, the nature-based solutions led by women in our bioregion, that there are many. We are going to kind of use our capacity and other capacities that we can mobilize to really design and highlight them well. And we hope that all of you will help us to push them through in this very, I would say, blurred for me, nature-based finance that is so central at COP30, no?
Thank you, Thais. So Fabricia, how do you feel women have an opportunity, and also what are the key barriers that you've seen in participating in nature-based solutions?
Andrea and Thais spoke so well, but to contribute with this discussion, I think that without the involvement of frontline communities, we cannot progress. So we have to understand that global solutions depends on local solutions. And women, especially Black and Indigenous women, hold up the structures of this country. They stand at the front lines of the fight against climate change, yet they are the most vulnerable to the crisis impacts due to gender inequality and precarious working conditions. And we must ensure economic practices that enhance the quality of life for these women. Causing less harm isn't enough. We need to invest in solutions, best practices, and the regeneration of our ecosystems. And women on the front lines, in the communities and peripheries, already know the consequences and the reasons that accelerate climate change. But since we live in a system that subjects women to its rules, they need the tools only, because the knowledge, the wisdom, they already have. But sometimes they just don't know that they know. It's something that happened to me. So I think education and capacity building on gender and climate is so important, especially enhancing climate leadership programs for them. Another solution that I think we have to look is communication and storytelling. So develop series, podcasts, or visual exhibits that highlight stories of women environmental defenders and why they are so important. And I think culture plays an important role in this transition because it has the power to touch people's hearts and spread the message. And about public policy, I think we have to integrate a gender perspective into climate adaptation plans and promote models of circular economy and care work that recognize and value women's roles in addressing the climate crisis. And to finish, going back to the case of the floods in Kimatsu that I mentioned, which marked the beginning of Visão COP, after listening to what those women knew, we co-created a vulnerability map of the city and built a database. And with that in hand, we brought our findings to the major and showed him that what needed to be done from that point on, and we had the evidences together. And after a lot of pressure, he finally listened, and the entire case, led by women, gained visibility and was turned into public policy, breaking the cycle of flooding in the neighborhood. And in the end, we even transformed their testimonies into an audiovisual series to raise awareness and shed light on this issue. So that's it. Thank you for the opportunity to share this story with you guys, and let's keep going together.
Congratulations for that really impressive work, and amazing that it turned into a public policy. So it's great to see when things like that actually happen. So I'm going to open up. If anyone in the audience has any questions, you can either write in the message or speak out loud. And if not, then I have another question. We have great discussions, great women, great reflections. Thanks a lot. A few people are sharing some of their work related to women and climate, and some people are very interested in Fabricia's work that you saw. Okay. I want to see the video. So if you could share that, after Fabricia, that would be great. The communications work that you did. So I guess Thais already kind of brought this up, but I was going to ask, so maybe Andrea, Fabricia, if you want to add to this, what do you see as everyone's talking about COP30, Brazil, Belém, everyone's looking at, will it be different than the last COP? And how do you guys see what's happening? What do you see the role of women? What are you looking forward to? I guess, yeah, start with Andrea and Fabricia, and then Thais, if you want to join in as well. I know you've already asked, but yeah.
Sure. Well, I think Thais is, I mean, we all have to leverage the fact that COP30 is going to happen here, and I do think it is a critical COP for us, especially in the face of what we are observing right now in the world, where we have climate denial growing, where we have backlash on D&I initiatives, and a discourse that is so antagonistic to what we had understood as civilization progress. So we really have to be alert, and I do think COP30 is a moment in time where we can make a stand and we can reaffirm our conviction on that which we believe is still the way to go. So I think there is an added political importance to this COP30, and I think we should definitely not lose the opportunity to just to showcase all of the solutions that are already occurring, that this is a movement that is going to continue, and that we have many people who do believe that, yes, there are things that we need to do to reverse the climate emergency that we've put ourselves in. There are solutions, that there are way forwards, and within this, nature-based solutions, as you mentioned, Katie, 1/3 of mitigation solutions can come from nature-based solutions. In the case of Brazil, our emissions are in the majority of our emissions are related to land use, be it deforestation or be it how we are producing food and other things. So we do need to talk about energy transition, but we also need to talk about how our food systems are currently producing the food we eat, and how underserved are the people who really produce the food we eat, and not the commodities that go to feed livestock. And they create GDP, but they don't necessarily feed the world as we would like it to. And that the model also has to change. And I think there are responsible people who also think of that and are working connected to the land. So I do think it's critical that we do something, that we show local solutions. I completely agree with Fabricia. There is a need for global interconnection and knowledge sharing and learning and financing. But solutions happen on ground. So we really need to make sure that we create the financial mechanisms for that oxygen that will help the transformation to happen, to arrive at the hands of the people, as we said, very fluidly. And especially to those who are Black, Indigenous, locally connected to the earth, like Fabricia also mentioned, and who have the knowledge. They just need the tools, be it education, be it financing, be it political freedom, agency, whatever it is that we had talked about. But before I kind of close in terms of how we use this, and I think there's one challenge right now that we still need to manage at COP, which is ensuring the participation of civil society. We have seen, the costs of going to COP in Belém, and how things have skyrocketed in terms of prices to be there. I think a solution will be found, but it is very important that we make sure that civil society is actively present in Belém, and I think they will be. Because this will be now the first COP after a couple of years where we have had limited space for civil society to speak their voices, and that diversity of narratives is important to happen at the COP as well. So just to close, and I guess maybe in an idea for us to kind of still keep hope, and that we need hope and energy directed at believing that there will be a way out, especially in the times we are living right now, where I think part of the strategy is to make us feel overwhelmed and depressed, is to remember all of these amazing, incredible initiatives that are happening on ground, and that is very powerful. And although it might not seem like that sometimes, like Thais said, the difficulties that we have, and we are not maybe as well connected as we should be to understand the true potential of all of the things that are happening, but they are happening. And they will be the solutions that we need when the most terrible moment comes, I think, if there is a most terrible moment. But when we need to face this, it will be these solutions that will be presented as alternatives for us to find our way forward. And I heard a factoid the other day that I wanted to share with you. I heard this lady from Citibank. She's a wealth manager at Citibank. I forgot her name, but she shared a piece of data that was to me so impressive, that in the next 5 to 10 years, $100 trillion will move to the hands of women and Gen Zers because of succession. And women invest their money very differently than men do. And that is an opportunity that we cannot miss. It's $100 trillion. So let's make sure we use that money well.
It's a great factoid and gives optimism. So I think we only have a few more minutes, so I guess let's just close up. If Fabricia and Thais, you could give a final word, either about COP or just a last message to everyone. Fabricia?
So,
I think it's
okay, you can go.
yeah, but it's going to be very short. I think I come from the generation that really embrace and this opportunity that we create among women of the sisterhood is global, no? And I think that we have made an incredible changes in the 20th century given to that, and I think again this is important, and I think this is one of the missions of She Changes Climate, to kind of bring move the bridges, or reestablish the bridges among women. I think this is very important, and to give visibility to, as Fabricia said, and I also is something very critical for our work at the bioregional level, to give visibility to what women are already doing, even if it's not complicated. Because the thing is that right now everything is so complicated, it's so full of graphs, it's so full of different mechanisms that many women that don't understand that are pushed away. So I think it's our role, as global advocates, as women that can make bridges at these levels, that we demystify, as Fabricia was saying, it's not about about like technology, very complicated engineer technologies, going back to the simple way in which many people can participate, because this way of creating this hierarchies of knowledge is what has created so much exclusion as well. No, so I think that we have to break these ceilings and really recreate sisterhood in terms of our times, which is different than 50 years ago when I was like brought being really carried into my life by incredible women that were pioneers of seeing what women could do, no? And I think that because even this 100 trillion, if it's true, because I see if you don't bring this idea of sisterhood stronger, women, even if they care in their hearts, they will be totally sucked into the systems as it is now, as I see many the climate. Still one more minute.
Okay, we're recording.
Okay. So, to be honest, I'm not so excited with the negotiations in COP30. So I think we have to keep looking for these organizations that are in the front lines. I don't know if they're going to access the negotiations, the event. So I think despite the COP30, we have to keep looking for them. We have to enhance them. We have to invest in them because COP30 will pass, but they're going to still be here fighting against climate change. So I think that's my final message. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was really wonderful to have the three of you on today. And I think we're looking at how to scale nature-based solutions in Brazil, how to put women at the front. And I think you guys all brought different perspectives, whether you need the finance, you need investment funds, you need people who are willing to direct that money to women, because we see the money is not getting to women. We need the people on the ground who are mobilizing, interfacing with the local communities, interfacing with the government, and we need the places that are creating the solutions, integrating that indigenous knowledge with technology, places like the biohubs. And yeah, we need a holistic approach. And as Thais said, the 21st century is the century of implementing. So I think that's the message. No more talking. It's about making things happen. So thank you so much for everyone for participating. There were some last minute questions that popped in, but unfortunately we didn't have time. But after we will share materials for all these three amazing projects that were shared. And thank you so much. Mamta, I don't know if you want to say anything else or we can say goodbye to everyone.
Thank you very much for this insightful talk and very, very important messages of sisterhood, of spotlighting women, of continuing to investment. Um, it makes my heart soar to hear it and feel more confident that we are going to be together in this march. Thank you very much to everybody who joined in.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.